This is the story of the late, great, intergalactic rainbow medicine show. Yep, that's what we originally called it. Most people think that it started at the Missouri Gathering in 1985, at least our part of it, mine and Haven's. But to tell the story correctly, we got to go back a few years. We got to go back to 1982. In 1982, I communicated with Aben. Aben was living in Arizona, and I was coming out there with the means to go into a recording studio, hopefully to be able to do some trade with what I brought and then go into a recording studio. I mean, that's another story, and we didn't really get into a recording studio, but that was the beginning of Aben's drive to get his song recorded, particular Forever Lennon, of which there are several really good versions of that have been recorded in the studio. But at that point, Forever Lennon was, I'm not sure if, I think he had written it by 82, but I'm not sure. It was right around that time. It wasn't too long after John Lennon died that he wrote that song. And so, but in 1982, we met up in Arizona. I'd taken my eldest son with me, Ibram, who was about 3 or 4 at the time. And we met up in a place in southern Arizona called Bear Springs, which was out in the desert. That is another story as well, what happened at Bear Springs. But ultimately, eventually, Aben met me there, and we went on another small journey north into northern Arizona. Just to clear something up in terms of history and just understanding, there was a lot of cults in the 60s and 70s, or groups of people which might be labeled cults. And some of those people they had some really high spiritual ideas and concepts. So Aben and I ended up gravitating towards them. And one example of that, of which Aben has probably spoken at length about, was the Love Family, of which both he and I had some experiences with. But there was also the Christ Family, which was the people notably known for wearing white robes, and they never wore leather, and they supposedly did not eat meat or even have sex at that point in time. They were all celibate. And there was also the Christ Brotherhood, which was another group of people which were centered in Eugene. But first we met quite a number of people. Both Aben and I met different people within the Christ family, and so we kind of got friendly with them. I mean, they were, other than their 3 rules, they were pretty pleasant and high people to hang out with. So we went from Bear Springs up to the Christ family's house in northern Arizona. I'm pretty sure it was Snowflake. Sholo comes in our mind too, because the names are similar, but I'm pretty sure it was Snowflake because it was like high altitude. And something happened up to this point. Aben and I had been playing music together for 3 or 4 years, going on 4 years, all acoustic. We hadn't gone into the band yet. And so we were sort of plodding in the direction of the medicine show without really knowing it. But then in the recording session that we were supposed to do in Arizona was sort of going to be a part of that. So we ended up on Christmas Eve doing some psychedelic medicine, and that was one of the year of my, I think we called it the Saturn's return. So I was going through various changes, and we had an event in which, long story short, I viewed what I consider to be some sort of an obstacle or abyss to our collective future without elaborating. Aben and I spoke about it at length until we decided that, okay, what are we going to do about this? And we explored the idea of what the biblical new covenant was all about, and realized that we thought maybe we were going to do a new covenant, but we realized that all the covenants that were done were enough. We didn't do any more. We need any more covenants. So what we did decide, though, was we did start our own covenant at that point. It was called Ark Reclamation Covenant, whereupon we resolved to recollect, reestablish higher spiritual attitudes, perspectives, and hopefully plant those seeds in the world. And in the process of doing that, we came upon another agreement, which was one of the things that we felt was absolutely necessary, was the recognition of, the identification of, the separate and isolation of, and the ultimate removal of the adversary. Now, I use the word adversary because it's open to description or interpretation or whatever. However, at that point, the adversary was becoming more and more obvious in various things, in various ways, particularly in the world. So we made a covenant, which was Ark Reclamation Covenant, which is also the reclamation of the Ark of the covenant in an intended sense, in a way. Not that we wanted to reclaim it to possess it, but we wanted to reclaim the power, the spirit, and the truth of it. That's what that meant. So we started Ark. And really, Ark was the beginning of the medicine show. Now, we went through various stages of Ark. We had a small gift made to us from a slight benefactor, which was only a few $100s, so we didn't really get well equipped with it. But we got equipped enough so that we started actually practicing songs together. And it was really just two of us, me and Aben on the drums and me on the guitar. And in fact, you can see a model of those drums and my guitar and the amplifier that I used, except that speaker box came later. I had some really just any old speakers I could hook up to it at first. My old Sears Silvertone amplifier, which we also used for vocals and for bass as well. And we all the way up to the point where we were playing in Tucson. But I'm jumping ahead. So after we'd established we were going to do Ark, then I went back to the Rainbow Farm. But the next year, which was like, well, actually it was 2 years later, in '84, I left the Rainbow Farm under circumstances which are another story, which you can get from, probably I'll leave it later around somewhere. But it doesn't have anything to do with the medicine show. Other than the fact that when I left, I went to Eugene and met up with Aben, and that's when we started practicing as Ark. So after officially starting Ark, whereupon we enlisted our bass player, Eagleheart. Eagleheart came onto the scene while we were in Oregon. And we got together with the Christ Brotherhood, who had a band, and they were in Eugene, and we spent some time around them, talking to them, just like we'd done other spiritual groups of people, that at least some of them wanted to be spiritual, so it made for good conversations. So we ended up getting invited to Patterson Brown's house, who was the leader of the Christ Brotherhood, to listen to his band. And so they had just got new equipment, and they were, testing it out and playing, and it was, and they were okay, they were good. They weren't like, Pink Floyd or anything like that, but it was okay. And then Patterson Brown started talking about his old equipment. They had this old equipment that they wanted to give to a noble cause, to a good cause. And so Aben and I jumped up there right away and said, well, hey, we're trying to do this thing. with this music, and we're just starting out, but we got, shit for equipment. And so Patterson Brown, actually, we talked to him, and he said, yeah, I think you guys are a candidate for getting, we have this other reggae band that we're looking at in California, but you're like second on the list. And so we actually got word that the reggae band had bowed out and got some other equipment. So we were expecting to get this equipment. In fact, everything we got told us it was going to happen. So we expected to go to the California gathering and rendezvous there and actually catch up with the equipment. Now the equipment was there, but this hijacking had gone on where this man who had been a member of the Love family, and the Love family was breaking up at this point, had been a member of the Love family. His name was Gideon Israel, and he had totally hijacked that equipment and talked them into giving it to him because, he had a bus and he had money and, so, and he had a good pot. So, the California gathering happened where this same person took this equipment and they did this terrible thing where they ripped up all the sagebrush to create a stage. And then they put like these two same groups of people up on the stage like every day from on and on. It's like these two reggae bands with I something or other. So I get I word and I will mix up. One of those guys. And we had talked about doing a little set there right around sunset on like the third or fourth day this was all going on, and apparent as far as we knew we were going to do it, but so we took some medicine so that we'd be in a great state when we got on the stage. But then the time wore on, and the same group of guys were just like they actually said they were only going to play one more song, and that song was like 20 to 40 minutes long. It might be 20, but it seemed like 40, so it was 20 to 40, but it was long. This one song that so finally what in the Rainbow was known as the Shante Cena, who was Aben was pretty good friends with most of those guys, and because of Aben I knew them and they knew me, and so they came to Gideon and the reggae band on the stage and basically told them that if they didn't quit and get off the stage that they were going to unplug them. So that's the only way we got on that stage that year, was by having Shantacina come in and threaten to turn them off because they were such hogs of the whole thing. And this was the equipment that we actually had a reasonable expectation we were going to get. So in some ways it was kind of depressing for us, and we were totally all these people were like pushing us away, vibing us out and everything else. Not the people now, we're talking about the musicians and Gideon and all those guys. The elites were like giving us the vibe, right? So it was that experience which made us decide that next year we were going to do something different. So when we went to Tucson and we put together ARC and we refined it, we practiced, and then we got our lead player Tongo became part of the band, and we had a couple backup singers too, which was Tongo's wife Consuela and Bilbo's other at the time was Nadia. But that was the band ARC. Amen Vision, Tongo and Eagle Heart plus Nadia and Consuela for Tucson. The ARC went on from there. And so we went to the Missouri Rainbow in '85, and Tonga had told us he wasn't going to go because he had too much stuff to do. So we knew he wasn't going to go. So we adjusted accordingly. But Eagleheart took parts of our equipment, parts of the drum set, and some other stuff, and the woman that he was with talked him into leaving before we got there. So he left the equipment with somebody trustworthy, fortunately, so we got the equipment back, and we were at the '85 Missouri Rainbow Gathering. And this is where it starts to get interesting, because we decided that we were going to do this medicine show. Okay, now we came there with the same, all we could do. I had a 4-track tape deck from like the 70s that I had, that was 12 volt, that hooks into a car. Then I disconnected the heads and I wired in female guitar jacks so that I could plug in 2 channels on this 4-track player and run it 12 volts off a car, which produced some surprising results. But that's really all that we had in terms of being able to power. I mean, we had our amplifiers and everything else, but we couldn't use them because we did not have any AC power, and solar power inverters and all that stuff was all, you know, pretty much rare and in the hands of people with lots of money. So we didn't even know about them. So the only way we were going to have power is if somebody had a generator. So we decided we were going to do the medicine show anyway. Had no idea how we were going to get what we needed, but we took a string and we roped off this big area in Bus Village where we said that we were going to have the medicine show, which of course created incredible rainbow political backlash right off the bat. Several people came up and told us that we couldn't do it, and we basically told them that they didn't have the authority to tell us we couldn't do it, and that it was going to happen. And so they had a council, you know, down in the main meadow, where they started counseling about these people who were just tied off this area for this stupid idea for blah blah blah. At any rate, they were trying to shut us down. They were going to have a council where they would decide to come up and like take it down, call it off, and tell us what we could and couldn't do. But while the council was going on, here's what happened. First thing that happened was this guy came in with a trailer, and on the trailer was like this huge Hobart generator. I don't even know how much it was. It was like more than we could ever use, like maybe 50,000 watts of power sitting on this guy's truck. It was diesel powered even. So there was a power, and the same day, a guy pulled up who was, we called him the Monkey Man, and he actually had written on his thing, it was a Rainbow Medicine Show. So he pulled up there, and he saw what was going on, and we talked to him, we talked to the power guy, and we had power, we had our musician was going on, and then Janine and Diego showed up with their gypsy wagon, which had a stage on the back of it. Now, you know, so we had the stage, we had the power supply, musicians were like, you know, coming and checking it out like crazy. You know, it's like Bilbo showed up within the hours and days with a piano, which we stuck right there. And then somebody came up with a PA system. I mean, that was just, they came up to it in that evening and said to me, I heard you might be wanting to use this system. Now, you know, Abe and I talked about this recently before he passed, and there's another side of the story. But I don't have the details, so I'm not going to expound on it. But this PA system showed up, and we plugged in the PA system. We had everything we needed. We basically, everybody knew that the medicine show was going on because they were making such a big stink of it in council, which I have to add a little bit. There is one of our friends and double agent, Stephen Principal, stood up for us for this particular event, and he filibustered and he blocked council for 3 days so that all the magical stuff could happen and the medicine show could come about. So that by the time the end of the 3 days was over, it was too late to do anything about it. The medicine show was like happening. It was going on. And musicians and dancers and jugglers and fire eaters and you know, everything in between showed up. Yeah, I do want to.
As a school of education, I think that our Rainbow experience was pretty phenomenal and definitely priceless education to be getting.
Well, it has value.
Looking at it as an education.
It's value, you know, and I think that
we all learned about each other up close and personal. It was great.
Yeah, as opposed to like the digital social media we have right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's only impersonal. It's not even real. You know, I can't indulge cyberspace. I'm glad to be in the dust of cyberspace. I'm as far back here as I am. Dust is settling, and I don't have to be computer dependent, which is my desire.
Thus we have the distinction between an organic interface and a technical interface.
Yes, indeed.
And it's like
you're a mix of both.
Well, I think it's really just like a matter of, it was like with television. It's like when I had the advantage of not being inundated with television from the time I was born. It's like my family didn't have a television until I was like 12, for example.
Wow.
I mean, I was familiar with it. My grandparents had a television.
Yeah.
And, you know, my friends had televisions. And,
yeah.
And so I spent some time watching TV just like everybody else, but it wasn't in my house till I was 12. And so it's like I had this special point of reference of not having it, of spending a lot of time outdoors playing with my own imagination.
Yeah. Even after we had a TV, I still lived on a horse ranch and I had my horses to attend to every day.
Right.
So I wasn't in the house watching TV.
And you know, it's like the television is, but it's like the internet. The internet obviously has totally replaced the television, even though technically television still exists.
Yeah,
but
the channels are still
they're
there,
all
right?
digital. They're all digital now, so they're basically the same thing. In fact, you know, pretty much whatever you can see on digital TV, you can see over the internet.
Yeah, it's always something.
So the vision of the A4 gathering in California, probably a lot of people don't know that there was like really 2 gatherings that happened in California.
Yeah.
And
instead of the one which we aimed and set out as our mission to do was one world peace gathering.
Right.
But as it turned out, it got fractured, huh?
Well, that was sort
the
of
pie
that was sort of
divvied up.
You know, sort of
sort of a it was a message of things to come.
It was a
Example of
prelude,
things to come.
indeed.
Prelude, that's the word.
That is the word, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, but 85, it's like I already talked about a lot of the stuff that happened at the Rainbow the medicine show at 85 Missouri Rainbow Gathering, and I'm sure that split was one of the factors why there was such a resistance there.
Yeah,
to us
the same
doing
power
this.
trippers pretty much were resisting the freedoms of their own brothers and sisters. How weird, huh?
Well, there's a lot of stuff. Some of the stuff I already alluded to is like there was a lot of magical, mystical stuff that was going on.
Oh, yeah.
And some of it is like kind of pertinent to what's happening right now with what people refer to as a awakening consciousness. But one of the things that I realized after I made this earlier video about the medicine show that I wanted to talk about was this part where in the midst of all the negotiations that was going on, where the council down below was basically trying to keep us from doing the medicine show, and
Was that based on electrified music?
that was one of the things. There was other things involved. I mean, it was a straight out, basically we basically established this thing. We roped it off, right?
Yeah.
And for some reason, it's like a couple of people really did not like the fact that we did that, right? That we took control over this,
Space.
by putting up string and rope, and even though we explained what our intention was, right? It's
Right.
like it didn't matter. It didn't matter. The whole point is that we put that rope up and we somehow violated something. I don't know what it was that we violated, but they felt it was violated. And that's what started the whole council and all different kinds of games. Electric music was one of the things I'm sure they threw out there, but most people said, hey, they're up in the Bus Village, they're not like in the meadow, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
They're in
the
their
music.
own camp. What's wrong
The
with
music wasn't really the wasn't the issue. It was me and Aben setting it up that was really the issue.
that? Yeah.
And
None of the high-holies.
and the fact that, and because the truth is, we didn't like roll into camp all decked out with a stage and equipment and everything else.
No.
We just rolled in with our guitars and made this mad, crazy proclamation that we were going to do the medicine show, right?
Yeah.
So it's like in the midst.
With the righteous motivation, it actually happened.
Yes, it did. And in the midst of that, particularly it was near the end of the council, when when it was finally over, Stephen Principal was down there, filibustering, blocking consensus to keep them from, coming up and making it stop it happen. Everything showed up. The stage showed up, the generator showed up.
The momentum of the people was far greater than the power of the council at that point, in my opinion.
So at that point, Badger had come up from down below, and he had seen what was going on with the medicine show, so he saw what was happening, right?
Yeah.
And he realized that it was inevitable, and regardless of what
People are going to make some music. They're going to make some music.
Regardless of anything at this point, it was already happening. So Abe and I are accompanying partway back down the trail, and he says, So let me get this straight. So if the council does not agree to the medicine show, then it's basically going against God. And Abe and I looked at each other, and then I told Badger, I looked at Badger, so that's what you're saying. And so basically he went down to the council, and I don't know what he said, but at that point it was a done deal. The medicine show started happening, and then a lot of this I've described about how all these different
Interestingly
incredible
enough, it
acts.
actually was starting to happen at the same time.
Yes, it was. and because the stage was already there, everything was already there. It was like it all happened in a.
Was it some of the gypsies that did the first tune or two? Or
them and
seems like-
us, them and Ark and
Yeah.
the gypsies, we were the main thing to start with. But with the piano and when people realized that they could do it, it's like it was amazing. Just act after act. I mean, all these incredibly talented people that I never seen or heard the Rainbow again. I mean, they were all there. It's like
Yeah.
there was dancers, there was like
Yeah.
poets, actors,
Everybody just stepped into their roles. It was so beautiful.
jugglers, fire swallowers, all was all there. It was incredible for
It
like,
really was indeed
3
incredible.
days, and everybody was really enjoying it, and everybody got their time on the stage, and in the
Remarkably
in the midst of that, there was this event that occurred which aided a lot in the success of that, which was I don't know which night do you think it was of the medicine show where you presented this kind of
Are you talking
magical
about
sacred
hash?
gift. Yeah, it was a.
The
I was gonna
gift,
say like magical
the
sacred
Turkish
gift,
hash
and I
that
was gonna
came
let
through.
you describe it, okay?
Uh,
And the event, how
Morocco,
it happened, yeah, because like
a fellow named Reggie. Just I never met him before. Never saw him again. Walked up, was just sort of milling around.
this was this like it seemed like, was it like backstage as a?
No, I was sitting out in front of the
Out of the
medicine show
front,
stage,
okay, out of the
in the
front.
audience area,
Oh, okay, right,
and in the commons, trying to pass doobies and catch some hits.
right,
And I was doing quite well.
right.
And I'm sitting there amongst a bunch of brothers and sisters, and this fellow comes walking up, looks kind of foreign in a fashion. It's like he stepped out of a motel into the gathering site. But he had this rainbow fishnet bag over his shoulder, and I had no idea what he had in there. But what he had in hand was this Turkish hash, and he just flown in from, apparently this guy's name is Reggie.
Wow.
Reggie.
Hopefully CIA and all those guys aren't really give a shit about this point.
Well, it's only like 30-some odd years ago, or 40.
right.
Just the other day. But
I might go,
a kind brother
Remember the
came
name.
walking up and sat down next to me and proceeded to share some of his hash with me. And I was really impressed with the medicine. And it was very, very good medicine indeed. And I commenced to thinking how wonderful it would be to have some of it to share with some of the brothers and sisters I knew in the gathering.
Right.
And somehow this brother knew I might be thinking like that. And we had this piece that was like a slice of bread
Right.
with foil around the edge.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was whittling off of it, out of the middle of it, kind of like. And we didn't smoke very much at all, and got really, really high,
Right.
really high in the spirit and in the mind's eye of being high. So while I'm thinking about asking him or bartering with him for some
Right.
hash to share, he's thinking about how to share what he has. Apparently, is what he's thinking.
Right.
How to share what he has with the most people possible without himself personally being anonymously, in other words. But at any rate, about the time I was really closing in on the idea of making a request of him about some hash, he stands up, reaches into this fishnet bag, pulls out a large piece of hash wrapped in foil, wrapped in plastic, wrapped in foil,
Right.
wrapped in plastic.
Okay. Right.
And he says, I'm sitting cross-legged, and he laid it on my legs, and he goes, "Are we not all brothers?" And I said, "Amen, brother." And it was hard to realize what the hell he had just done. I did not expect him to
Right.
just let the Spirit use us to make the delivery the way that it did. So I proceed to take this rather large loaf, shaped like a loaf of bread, wrapped in foil, chunk of Turkish hash, backstage where there was a couple of buses parked.
Right.
And I happen to believe that a bus driver might have a hacksaw my idea of breaking up this hash would be to cut it up into slices and then cut that up into quarters, which I did. And all the while, what the saw blade was raking off was piling up.
Yeah.
I was loading all the bowls that came up to the. I was sitting at a little
I
kid.
remember there. I
kid's
went to
school
that.
desk.
I went to that table. I did.
Yeah, I was sitting at a little kid's school desk. Remember
Yes. Yes.
and I'm having a ball cutting this up, and I knew where every rainbow camp was.
Yep.
And it was not hard to get volunteers to make the run to
It
take
was
a
like
quarter.
the hash stand in the middle of the night behind the
Yeah.
Rainbow Medicine Show.
No money involved, no charge.
Yeah.
This is blessings of the Spirit and delivered.
Yes. It was
But
nice.
somehow the Spirit managed to get some to every camp that was established at that gathering.
Oh yeah, it got
All the
around.
family
It
members
got around.
got their taste.
Everybody got to smoke the hash. So part of the magical part of which the
That's it,
medicine
one-
show came about was, you know, that was a good example of it. You know?
Yeah, magic happened while that was going on.
Yeah.
That was some incredible magic.
I think it's like if it had been for Avon, for example, then, you know, I would have never even taken one step forward in trying to make the medicine show happen.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, there was like the two of us were responsible for, you know, various facets of it happening. But it's like, I think Avon was probably the most dynamically out front in terms of socially with everybody.
True.
So it's like, you know, and I backed him up, and occasionally I had to, like, you know, step forward, so to speak. But, you know, yeah, so
Well,
it's like
he did it for you on occasion too, I'm sure.
so I would sort of, as a witness, that you were there as a spectator and everything else, it's like, you know, you could give me a different perspective on that whole thing.
I was one of the fortunate few to actually have a seat in the audience any length of time, and I caught most of the shows, most of everyone's presentation of what they wanted to do up there. I hung around for it because I thought it was the most important things going on in the gathering at that time, really and truly. Well, you guys playing on different sides of the camp, but basically on the same side in spirit, and it came through in your music individually that you guys were coming from a similar place.
That's ultimately how we got away with it, Abe and I.
Competition's
You
the
know,
best thing
by,
for living.
by the, you know, just the combination. I mean, we had a combination. It's like, you know, we sort of had that duo combination that you hear about, like, you know,
Yeah.
famous quote unquote, you know, people that work together well.
Like the Righteous Brothers,
Yeah.
Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah, right.
to name a couple.
We worked together really well as acoustic musicians, and ultimately as in bands too. But then when you get into bands, that's when things start getting weird.
Yeah.
But at this point, you know, it's like Aben and I were doing this visionary thing at the medicine show. Because see, we both sort of had these similar visions. Almost, we talked about it. And it's like almost at the same time, we had these ideas about this medicine show, and so we spent a lot of time talking about it, and decided we were going to do it at the Missouri Gathering. So it's like I've already sort of narrated most of that story already. So it's like getting to where the idea of having another perspective and witnessing the whole thing. It's like, you know, give me a synopsis of what you witnessed in terms of, you know, how the medicine show happened. You know, realizing that, you know, the story's already been told, but that doesn't matter. But a synopsis of you know, the medicine show from how you experienced it.
The fact that our story itself is a story.
Keeping
Terry,
it as brief
you follow
as
what I'm
possible.
saying there?
Oh, well, yeah, I know. I mean, it's like, you know, this is all
Part of a really big thing. quite a bit to record, indeed.
And you know, actually most of it can't be recorded. We're only dealing
There's
with,
only
you
a couple
know,
perspectives.
snippets and ideas and,
Yeah.
you know, images that we create with our words within the context of what we're doing. So for 3 days, non-stop, with the exception of the hours, the wee hours, about 3 in the morning till about 9 or 10, when everybody was getting sleep and doing what they needed to do, the medicine show continued. There was no lineup. We didn't have a sign-up sheet. There was no tryouts. Nobody had any expectation other than hopefully getting on the stage. And I'm pretty sure almost everybody who came, if not everybody who came, got to have their moment on that stage for 3 days. Some people still remember it. Frenchie, who is one of our friends, was the master of ceremonies for those 3 days. And it was an incredible example of how people could work together without egos, without money, without all the false values that supposedly motivate people so they could get up on the stage and do their magic and their music and their art. But it happened. It happened for 3 days. There was plenty of witnesses. So it was real. The Rainbow Medicine Show had begun. Now, at the end of 3 days, we were burnt. We needed to take a break. So we took a break and we stopped the medicine show for like a day or so. And I remember waking up one morning, and in our front yard, sitting on my bus seats, were these two guys, one of whom I knew, that were discussing how they were going to divide up all the profits they were going to make from the Rainbow Medicine Show. And well, you can imagine how I felt, and Aiden was there too, and so it's like they literally jumped in and took over, and they managed to do it because one of them was one of the major Rainbow elites, named Henry the Fiddler, and the other one, I can't even remember who it was. But the Rainbow Medicine Show at that point turned right from the direction I was going. And there was another thing going on that was personal with me, and I went in my own way. But the Rainbow Medicine Show carried on, went from the Rainbow Gathering, Ava went with it, to St. Louis, Missouri, as well as the Native Americans went with it too. And that was probably the most positive part of it, is that they were like, you know, they had videos and they had things they talked about, they did drum circles, and they were part of the medicine show at that point. So they went to St. Louis, Missouri, but then it became a disaster. They occupied a park in St. Louis, a public park, and set up Rainbow Camp and everything else. But unfortunately, like many Rainbow events, particularly with the nationals that have occurred in later years, it was a collection of you know, street people who were homeless people, more or less, who were taking advantage of the Rainbow Trail, which offered, you know, quite often, like at the gathering, free food and everything else. So that was going on. So it ended up being clashes with the local police, and they basically got kicked out of St. Louis, and that looked like that was the end of the medicine show. But it wasn't, because Avon continued on to the East Coast. He went to Maine, and somewhere along the line he met the mother of his children, Takara, and they ended up coming back to Oregon briefly for when they were first together and trying to make a go of it here, but they weren't having much luck, so they ended up going back to the East Coast. And while they were in Maine, Aben put the medicine show back out there again, and he did some incredible stuff with it. And to illustrate what he did with the Rainbow Medicine Show, it was no longer the Intergalactic whatever, it's just the Rainbow Medicine Show. And what he did with the Rainbow Medicine Show, at least I'm pretty sure, I'll have to look at the flyers, which we'll show you those flyers. But in order to illustrate what he did
I'm going to interview his son in the next segment of this video. So this is Aaron Griffin, Aben's oldest son. So tell us how you came to be in Maine and do the Rainbow Medicine Show, and what your dad, some of the stuff your dad did to accomplish that feat.
Well, as a kid, I didn't really know the history, and don't actually really know much of the history fully. Mom moved us there. She felt, as her intuitive, that was important for us to go there, and Dad followed that intuitive, and I'm really proud of that because it protected us kids. And there was a hippie community in LaGrange, Maine, central Maine, north of Orono, Maine, where the University of Maine is. We called it the Land, all old kids from the Dead shows, and they lived on the hippie communities when I was a kid. And they ended up having a community in Maine, and so we just so happened to land on it. So we ended up in a camp, which was very hard. But the whole time, Mom and Dad, especially Dad, he had this dream, and he like, of making a show that and a lot of people have the same thing, and that's one of the things I think turned him on to this idea, was as a community idea. There was a council at the community about 95, 96, and he offered the ideas of the cooperative economic system, and they made a council and voted on it. And Idrin was the reggae band that was a part of the hippie community, that was a part of the show. And Dad and Mom and many other people pushed for media coverage, which is really hard to do for nothing almost. Like, people didn't understand what they were doing. So Dad had to make a vision of what the Rainbow Medicine Show is. Yeah, present it in a way that the people could understand, and it was really hard.
So he did like calling people on the phone and going visiting people.
Well, snail mail was the first thing. I remember him getting letters from you and from other people, and him discussing things with Mom and other people who were around him, and that's actually how it started. And going to libraries and actually reading books, physical books about what he wanted to research. Many things, I mean, it was amazing the things that he researched at the libraries. And he ran across the Mondragon system in one of these studies, right? And that led him to promote what happened with Idrin and creating of what he saw as, I believe, and this is just a kid's point of view too. I was only 7, 10, 11, 12. What I saw was him and the people around him working together to create a cooperative show that was multi-based, a multifaceted show that also wasn't just about music, it was also about activism. And it was also about how to get bands who weren't known and people who weren't known airtime, and that was really hard. And so one of the things I was talking about was the vision to create the sales pitch.
So one of the things I was thinking about was the process that Aben went through, like getting sponsors and making that flyer and all that stuff leading up to the event itself.
Yeah, I think one of the things that he did first was basically try to get Bill Linnell. It kind of started with the anti-nuclear thing, really, is that he met Bill Linnell, and Bill Linnell had kept safety records of Maine Yankee, which is a power plant in Maine, that had almost melted down multiple times, and nobody really knew about it because the main Yankee was giving a lot of money to the local media and the school, the university there, and helping them do tests probably, stuff like that. And then they shut down, and so Dad heard about it and was really upset because he'd been anti-nuclear since the 80s and a part of the Indian movement and stuff, and that, and women's movement. And so he felt like if everybody got together under one tent to focus on one thing, that they could do that with each one of the issues one at a time and actually win the fights that they're trying to win. One of them was legalizing marijuana too. And so this is from 94 to 97. And then so Bill Linnell was the missing piece because he actually had the evidence to stop Main Yankee from being renewed. He had this whole basement was full of boxes full of records. And so he went through them and showed Dad all these important records of what happened and how it was crazy. A huge part of Maine almost got unlivable. Well, almost part of the East Coast could have, depending on which way the wind blew, multiple times.
Yeah.
And he had the evidence proving it. And so Dad tried to get him media, and he went all over he could, all over the place. And there's this one girl who did Beatles Mania Hour or something like that. Joyce Wimmer, I think's her name.
Joyce Wimmer.
People all over the world.
People all over the world?
Yeah, people all over the world. We are the power change.
Yeah.
We are the power change.
Yeah.
We are the power change. We are the power change. Change. Tiananmen Square, yeah. Tiananmen Square. We honor the students of Tiananmen Square. Yeah. But we are the people. We are the power. The power of change. All over the earth. We are the power of change. Now if you're into the power to change, you better set your mind, your heart free. Just imagine the people all over the earth are living together in harmony. But we are the people. We are the power. The power of change. All over the earth. We are the power of change. Let go of America. Remember Kent State. We are the people. We are the power of change. All over the earth. We are the people. We are the power. All over the earth. The power of change. The power of change.
And she really helped Dad and Bill Linnell get the airtime. And then Dad tried to get him more, and that was radio. And so he tried to get him on NBC, and NBC didn't want to do it. And then PBS and NPR said that they didn't want to tote Bill Linnell's horn because he was anti-nuclear, and they said that because Main Yankee had been giving them money.
Right, yeah. Right. They were funded by all these.
Partly
rich
funded
people,
by it, yeah. Back when they were open. So they figured, if we let Payco, I think I can't remember the name of the company, but if they figure, let them open it, and then they'll give us more money. And NPR is supposed to be liberal, which really influenced me in my whole whole idea of what a real liberal is and conservative and all that stuff and how it's not real. But so Dad ended up meeting the weatherman to NBC local news somehow in Bangor, and he happened to also be the bass player to Stephen King's frickin' blues band.
Nice.
So this guy liked Dad and let Dad and Mom and Bill and Elle have airtime. Pretty much got the NBC to give them time. And it was really funny because I've never seen people like my parents on the news before. It was really awesome. 20 minutes to talk about social justice in every part of our society, especially economically. And it was really good. And Bill and Elle was able to talk about it, get his message out that we don't need to be opening up a nuclear power plant. And then, so Dad and the people around him said, well, why don't we throw shows to get people to sign petitions? So they do speakers and have petition signing out front. And so they worked on that. It was really hard. And one of the things he did to finance some of it was he went around with me, actually. I was with him through a lot of this. And we would go to all the green businesses door to door on foot with the sales pitch and the pamphlet that he had made, handmade, by taking old school, cutting out and printing one thing and making it small and put it in a little, I forget what it's called, but it's like a collage or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it.
There's a word for it.
But and then copying all that and
Templates.
making hundreds and hundreds of pamphlets
Right.
from scratch. And we helped him and stuff. It was really fun. I remember coloring the pamphlets by hand because we couldn't afford to print them out in color. And that was, I think, people love that, to see that it was colored by kids.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun as a family doing that. And we quilted the medicine show quilt together. But we went door to door, green businesses, with a sales pitch in the pamphlet and said, hey, here's a spot on the pamphlet that you donate a certain amount of money to, you can get this spot. And that's how he was able to fund a lot of things. And he was really good at talking to people and making them see what he wanted them to understand. So we threw shows all over Maine, and it was really fun, and got petitions, a lot of signatures. What I want to work on now is trying to actually do the dream of a show that's a traveling show where it's a cooperative and a sharing vision of us trying to change the world through messages and do petition signing and everything like that. Speakers are a really important part with the music, I think, is something that I learned in doing the plays and trying to get all the activists in the local community together.
Oh, it's a whole ball of wax. The whole scope of human expression.
Yeah, in it.
It's like, because somebody getting up and stating what they feel passionately believe in is art as much as the poet who quotes a poem or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's all part of the mutual empowerment of each other.
Yeah.
And
like, so we got in contact with the Green Party, and they seemed like they were going to help us. And I remember sitting in meetings with them, and they're like, really, oh cool, yeah. But in the end, they kind of like hindered the whole idea. But then once Ralph Nader really got in contact with Dad, Ralph Nader really, I think, thought that my dad understood what my dad was saying more than most people, because Ralph Nader's very intelligent and is very he's well studied, and he's been an activist since the 60s, actually.
And he was an economist. A consumer advocate.
Oh, yeah, consumer advocate.
Yeah. So that had to do with it being an economist as well.
Yeah. But I think the Mondragon system too, he probably looked into it and everything. And so when I first time I think Dad met him, I was there, and he was very understanding of the whole idea of the Rainbow Medicine Show. And Dad got him to speak at the Maine Center of the Arts and the university. And it was really fun and amazing. And one of the funny things about it is I was out front trying to get people to come in because we didn't have time to promote it, which was really sad. But there was this Native American guy, big dude, scary looking to me. I was like 10 or 11, and I'm pretty much security, and like he comes through the door, and we have tables sit there for petition signing, and I'm like, hey, here's the message, what we're trying to do, and legalize hemp and equal pay, equal rights stuff, you know, civil rights, Native American rights. He's like, are there any Native American representatives here? I'm gonna be one. I'm going to be the one. And I was like, well, okay. I didn't know what to do because he was so heavy, it kind of tripped me out. And I was like, well, let me bring you backstage to my dad. And, you know, Ralph Nader's back there. Everybody's back there getting ready. And you know, the energy in the air was really high. And so I bring him to my dad. He says a spiel to my dad. I'm going to do this. You know, my dad's like, oh, thank God. I haven't been trying to get in contact with AIM forever, the American Indian Movement, and nobody got in contact with me. So yeah, you're going on stage, and he put him up on stage, one of the first people, and met him right there. His name was Uchi, and he became a really close family friend. But and that was just one of the many people in that show that we got connected with. One of the cool things is they did all women's. What is it, like a brass band? It was like big band style. I want to do that. That was so cool. And they like opened up with like big band style. That's so cool. And then Ralph Nader spoke. So the petition signing wasn't legally binding. So all the signatures we got, it was just really to show how many people cared. And so somebody, maybe dad or somebody, sent it to the company, and the company refused to open it because they felt that the most of the population of Maine was not into having a nuclear power plant that almost melted down. And I can guarantee you they didn't pay somebody to go in and check the safety records. So Bill Linnell, who now is a senator, who everybody said was crazy, which is one of the really funny things about all this, is my dad was legally crazy, and he was going around like a freaking professional getting this guy all this airtime, and then now and he's a senator because they didn't know who the fuck dad was. He went by Aben, and they didn't know, you know, so they're like, whoever did this could do it again, you know what I mean? And they are afraid, I know it. That's why they're not investing. And it taught me a lot about Green Party and the liberal New Age Democrats, which are just conservatives in a whole nother way, or not even really. They're you know, weird and like against population, or like population control is now okay. And like really, when we were doing the movement, trying to get people involved, the hardest time we had was with people who were actually on our side. It was weird because of infighting and just, I think, a lack of focus on everybody's part, but few people, you know. And I think that when we do this again, it would be nice if we have a good focus, intent, and everybody tries to do as best they can to not infight, and like try to, because that's part of what we're dealing with, is the system is created to keep us from being able to freely work with each other without getting uptight and without having drama, and that's stopping us.
I always kind of want to move it back towards the thread of the show and the closing up, for the fact that, so you through the result of having all these shows and getting all these different signatures on the petitions, you influence the probably, like, you know, the people who are responsible for the Maine Yankee to not renew their government approved, whatever it was, their permit or whatever. So they basically closed it down.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's what I wanted.
They stopped the renewal.
Right.
They didn't want to invest any more money into it, and the government were going to give them the grants. They still say they will. Yeah. Which is one of the trippy things about this. The company decided.
We have to shut it all down. You got to shut them all down. That's what we have to do. And like you said, Fukushima is the perfect example of the reason why. And at this point, you know, anybody trying to justify the existence of nuclear power plants as they exist right now is like, you know, it's kind of like...
it's not nuclear power. That's one of the misconceptions. No, it's actually a big boiler.
Yes, right.
And
heating up water with...
There's actually real power. There's actually real fusion like plants that are
Right.
being created.
Fusion. Well, see, the nuclear power is based on fission,
Yeah.
right? Which was, the whole, basically based on the idea of splitting the atoms. So it's like what they've done is they create this, and incidentally, of course, they create the material for nuclear weapons through these nuclear reactors.
That's
which
partly
is
why we
really
still
one of the
have
main
it.
reasons why we still have them.
Yeah.
And so.
Hanford.
Right, so it's like, yeah, they all have to be shut down, and that's definitely one of the whole point of promoting alternative things, like alternative economics, alternative energy and power, alternative lifestyles.
That should be the focus of the show.
I mean, yeah, all these things, and and the thing is yeah, of course it's open to the everyone that can participate, opportunity to say.
To voice
Not
their
everybody
opinion.
wants to.
Well,
Yeah.
everybody really does like voicing their opinions, but nobody really like to help.
Lots of times people say they want to voice their opinions, but when it comes down to voicing their opinions in
a circle
or whatever, they become intimidated or whatever.
Yeah, the bands, I think, really started to get it. They were like, whoa, this is like, we got shows and stuff. Because a lot of it was, if we were able to do what we do now, where we can just create our own venues, it would have been a lot different, because we had to work really hard with the venues to get them, to accept us.
Oh yeah.
Which is one of the problems with today's music, is the venues are all really, really crooked. Or not crooked, there's unfair and charge too much for tickets, and then
that's all due to the false values constructed around the music industry itself, by creating, turning music into a product and instead of what it is.
Yeah.
Which is music. that it's a human experience, not a product.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that there's not art in recording. I think there is.
Oh yeah.
But in terms of arbitrary values, like the music industry that creates, this modeled image that fits whatever generational fad is happening at the time, right?
Well, really, it doesn't even fit. They make it.
Well,
now.
they do. A big part of it is making it fit, but that's all based on the idea of capitalism, of profit, of being able to sell something as a commodity,
manipulating people's now for money,
and
instead of it being morally wrong.
And the magic does not happen in that format.
Yeah.
So the enabling, all these musicians that exist, and there's like hundreds and thousands of creative songwriters, musicians, people who would gladly play, for gas money or whatever, just so that they didn't have to dip into their own pocket to play. Yeah. I mean, they would gladly play basically for free, right? All over, everywhere, and just because they would doesn't mean there's something wrong with their music or what they have to contribute. That's all because of this false value that's been placed on it by the industry, and the images of perfection and the perfected digital loops, right?
There's probably cultures who considered musicians at the highest top of the,
There must have been at some point.
Well, I was just thinking about cooks too, like how cooks get really bad in our society.
Yeah.
But a cop gets paid really, really well. But really the cooks, somebody who's cooking your food for you,
that's a good
is
point.
really, really important.
Good point. Yeah.
And $12.50 an hour, and having 3 kids and stuff, and being a full chef is like.
But the whole thing about the show is the ability to provide an alternate venue for local musicians,
and still try to make some money for the people who are involved in it, though, too. Hopefully, because I think that I want to do what Dad was doing, like where he goes around and says, "Hey, do you want to donate to what we're doing?" And people do it all the time. GoFundMe's have been going.
True.
Really good.
So after the Haven pulled off that mighty feat of getting people together behind the idea to shut down the nuclear reactor and make a statement against nuclear proliferation, there was a space in time where we did several bands together. We played several bar fairs. We did True Believers and Merkaba. Those were the two major bands that we did together. I even played the drums in both of those, similar to ARC, only in those bands it was me, Aben, my wife Lynn, and Grant was our bass player, Grant Mobley. And that sort of reminds me of something I certainly don't want to admit from the story, flashing back to the Missouri gathering and the medicine show, and how I had explained that Tongo did not go and Eagle Heart had taken off and left us with just the instruments. So it was only Aben and I that were part of the band ARC. But a good friend stepped up and filled in, and that was Jim Hancock. People have known him as Mandolin Jim, and he's been a major part of the acoustic music movement and scene in Austin, Texas for decades now. He plays at the Kerrville Music Festival quite frequently, every year as a matter of fact. But he played bass with us and hung out with us and was part of ARC during the whole Missouri gathering, so he definitely has to be put on that list. And so jumping forward again to after the main gathering, we do these bands, True Believers and Merkaba, which were essentially the same band, except that True Believers, we had Cole was part of the band, Cole Brashear, who passed a few years ago as well. And he dropped out of the band, and what was left formed Merkaba. And at one point, Aben handed over a replacement drummer, and we went to Colorado with it. And that during that time that we went to Colorado, that's actually in the correct chronology of the story, where Aben and his family went to Maine, and they did this thing with the medicine show, as described by their eldest son, Aaron. So we did the barter fairs, we did the Rouge barter fair, we did the Hope Mountain barter fair several times now. We have for the past few decades, and always in the back of both of our minds was this idea of the show that would go forth and lift people up and show them a better way to do things, all kinds of different things, all the way from, a better way to use some sort of form of exchange or economics, as in cooperative economics, to a better way to interact with each other in terms of allowing the living art and music to come forth without putting all these strange conditions on it that creates elevator can music instead of live vibrational interaction. So this is the last medicine show, and the show will go on.
And now for a limited short time engagement on the planet Earth art. I forgot. This works. I forgot the beat, bro. Go for it. What's your leading?